Well, welcome back to the RevTech Revolution. And today I'm just thrilled to have the Executive Director of AI at Wharton and Corporate Engagement for all of analytics at Wharton. Mary Purk is the director of this group. So excited to have you here on the RevTech Revolution, and welcome.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here and to talk to you, Betsy, especially about what we do in AI and how it's going to impact RevOps.
So tell us a little bit about your role at Wharton's AI and Business Analytics Research Center. How did you get here? Who does the center serve? And how would you like our audience of RevOps leaders to think about the work you do and how it might help them?
Sure. Well, I always like to start with the bigger entity before I start with myself. And so the center that I am leading is AI at Wharton. It's relatively new, although AI has been researched at Wharton for a number of years, but we really now consolidated it into a new center. And it serves not only the faculty and academics and students at Wharton and Penn, but industry-wide, it is there to serve the industry leaders as well as professionals to expand their knowledge and application around AI in analytics and how humans, basically customers or consumers, interact with AI and the future of that technology and how it's going to change our society. And how it's going to not only it's going to change our society, but change how we do daily tasks. So that's what the center is focused on. And the center is focused on not only how to use it today, but obviously how to use it in the future. So they are really looking, AI is changing every day. So it's looking much as fast as it can into the future. And then I think you asked, how did I get to this great intersection of analytics and AI and business? And fortuitously enough, when I started out after graduating from the University of Illinois, anyone who's out there, INI, I joined a company that's now called Accenture. Learned all about, way back when, COBOL programming and some of those skills that I learned. And my very first job, I'm still applying today, and that is where you are always asking the right question and then creating an algorithm or hard coding for an algorithm to solve a problem using data. Data was very, very important back then. It would make or break your particular module, and it's still doing that today. And through that, then I just progressed into working at the University of Chicago. I have an MBA from there, Booth, and worked on a retail center where we implemented pricing and merchandising experiments at a grocery store and collected granular data by store, by week, and we implemented A/B testing, which is unheard of to be able to do at that time. Collected that data for over 3 years, and that data today is still being used for researchers to understand consumer behavior. And then I've also gone into industry, worked with companies called Nielsen and IRI around retail data and studying the different customer journey around that. And then Wharton came calling, and I said, okay. And so now I'm at Wharton.
Terrific. What a background. You were just talking a little bit about the work that you've done on customer journeys. And of course, the audience here, that's their focus, right? Is how do we take the tools and the processes and the people to support that customer journey and the people who are working on it directly? Tell me a little bit about some of the most important things that people who work on those customer journeys should consider when thinking about using data to identify growth opportunities.
Yes. So I think, fortunately or unfortunately, anyone who's been really close to the customer or consumer, I mean, there's two different ways, people can look at it. Let's just think about the consumer/customer. They are fickle and they are hard to understand, and they produce a lot of data points, especially now that we have the mobile devices. Fortunately, technology has caught up to the location of where people are and identifying where that data comes from, despite the fact that cookies is, you can no longer track cookies on the internet, but what it affords us is the geolocation of the mobile device to know where that consumer is experiencing the journey with the company. So as I say all these different things, a very common theme is the data, and people continue to invest in the data and house the data. And the customer journey is still all about data, good data, but it's also understanding what you're trying to solve for for their consumer. Is there a certain pain point you're trying to solve for, or is it more variety you're trying to provide for the consumer? I think you always have to decide what it is you are trying to improve upon in that customer journey, and do you have the data to improve to answer those questions? And it is complicated. Complicated. Simplification is always a good idea, but also being able to repeat what you're doing again is also incredibly valuable as you move forward to solve a problem. You're not solving the problem for a day or a week or a month. Trying to solve a problem or understand a journey over the period of possibly, I think, several years. Maybe 3 years might be the most you really need to solve for at this point, because data and technology is changing so much. I wouldn't really solve for much beyond that. Way back in the day with loyalty, there would be baby loyalty programs. Or Sears had a program I worked on where we were trying to do, it was called we talk about customer lifetime value, which is still super important. But to me, why don't you solve for the lifetime value? If you can capture it for 3 years, then that tells you and your organization can capture it for a lifetime. So don't tell your people to capture it for a lifetime. How about like 3 years of that? And if they can do that, you have a golden ticket there, and you should pay them well.
Your point about repeatability is really interesting too, because you start to see some flash in the data that you get excited about, but then being able to replicate it and then scale it is also super important. So, interested in understanding some of the fundamental truths that you've learned about data and analytics that most people miss.
I would say you need to make sure you spend time understanding the question you're trying to solve for. And you hear that in every podcast, you hear it on everything, but it is a fundamental truth. You need to understand what you're trying to solve for. And I have this innate nature, which drives people nuts sometimes, but I want to, even though I'm not an engineer, I want to know, why do you need that information to solve that problem? Why do we have to care about having a cantilever underneath a shelf so the shelf doesn't fall down? Someone can say, well, it's physics if you don't understand. And again, I think it's important to say, why are you trying to solve this question or this problem? Why is it relevant to the consumer? Why is it relevant to our revenue? Is it because we're increasing our revenue? Is it because we're decreasing costs? I think it's good to explain to the team, this is why we're trying to solve the problem. So it's not only about the question, but it's about the rationale and explaining to the team why you're trying to solve that. And in doing that, you empower them to possibly bring their own creativity to that solution. So that's the first thing, is the question and informing people around that, and put a variety of people around that question, because then you can get the best answer. The next is, where are you getting the data? How old is the data? Where is the data stored? Is the data, is it synthetic data or is it real data? How costly is it? It's everything around that data and the accessibility of that data and how you use it. So I think it's important, as a third piece, is understanding the ethics of that data, the governance of that data. Do you have that in place? And then finally, you talked about it yourself, Betsy, and that was around scalability. Are we solving something that's in one part of the country, or is it because it's a phenomena right now? Is it COVID related, or is it, is something that's, going to, stand the test of time? So understanding the scalability and, the longevity of potentially the impact that this solution might have. So I think I reviewed, what the question is and bringing in a wide variety of people to think about that question, knowing where you're going to be getting that data, making sure you're in compliance, it's, ethically, you're doing all the right things with that. And then scalability in terms of its importance. And then finally, making sure you have your IT team, someone from the IT team, very much involved, and that they want to support this, this solution that you're going after.
So, really good rules of thumb there. And we've had other guests, and certainly some of the people that we work with on a regular basis, feel that pain point about the stakeholders not being able to articulate what they're really after. They have a gut instinct or a directionality about it, but in order to get that really crisp problem statement, what are some of the things that you've done, or how do you advise people to get stakeholders who are, you know, very experienced, but somehow don't think in terms of data accessibility, etc., or even good question formulation?
I think there's a couple of different maybe tools in the toolkit, as you would say. And I'll start with a story to help with one of them. We are working with a quasi-government entity that had a malware a couple of years ago. And so they are very resistant to any technological advancement because they feel technology is going to come and create, it's just bigger risk.
Yeah.
Bigger risk. So why are we going to do that? We're going to do the same old, because it's going to be less risk. But so there's some new leadership there that's trying to change the cultural norm. So I think it's important for the stakeholders to understand, is it the question or is it the cultural change? Which means it's a larger issue and the whole senior leadership team needs to be on board. And there has to be multiple messages sent out to the organization that we are now here. And if we aren't going to continue to advance our processes using new technology, we are not going to be in existence a couple of years. And there is risk. There is inherent risk. But there are two things. We are going there. We are moving forward. So this is the message that senior leadership can provide. You need to say, we are moving forward, and tell them where you're moving forward to, give them a vision, and then give them a stake in it and say, we need you to be part of this. You have all the domain knowledge. We need you to express the knowledge, and we really can't have, put up roadblocks to this knowledge of where we're going. Also, if we don't change, we won't be competitive in the future. So it's a conversation that the team who's doing the interviewing, if they sense that there's constant roadblocks and changes, I think they need to get senior leadership more involved, but also educating people about technology. And possibly that means giving them resources to attend online classes, giving them examples of possibly other companies in the industry that have used the new techniques or the new industry and where they are now, so that they can be hopeful, that they can envision their role in using technology, but that their role is not eliminated, but it is in fact enhanced. A lot of times it's resistance to change because they're worried about their own position. So I think people just have to be super sensitive as to, why would people not be wanting to adapt to the technology or provide knowledge that would help the adoption, and why there's a lot of resistance. And I'm not saying this is easy. Words aren't cheap. I mean, look at here. This is costing us nothing to do other than our time that we're willing to give. But to really affect change, you need to bring people along. And sometimes that takes a lot of patience on the leaders to listen and understand what those motivations are and establish trust. So those would be some words of advice. It's not easy. But you need team leaders that are willing to go the distance. I always say in some of these projects, you need to clearly identify task masters and project managers that don't ruffle feathers, but they love moving a project along. And those are the people who you say, you guys guide this along. And then that way some of the leaders can step back and reevaluate how they're going to reintroduce the new ideas or different, maybe new ways that they can help those employees that are a little bit more resistant to change.
Yeah, and it's a really good recipe in general for change, behavior change and change management, right? And we were just talking about it in the lens of going from maybe more of a instinctual and experienced-based approach to revenue to a data-driven approach to revenue, right? And then layer on top of it AI and suggestions of the next best step to take with your customer or the things that are starting to come online in terms of time saving efficiencies, those kind of things. Is there anything different about AI when it comes to the same type of advice and behavior change that you're experiencing works?
Again, I think one, you need to know who is resistant to change. You need to identify them and you need to get HR on top of it right away and understand what is going to happen. Like within the company, is that one of the things you're going to go to the street with and say, we're going to save, 700 jobs? And if there are, but we're creating the other 400 jobs and being really, that I think is just you need to paint the picture of the future. And if you can't paint that picture of what that future is in your company, people aren't going to believe you. They're not going to believe you. So why would they contribute to the solution? So thoughtful communication and knowing where you're going to be. And yes, there's change, but there's going to be all these openings of these other jobs. Also, the fact of the matter is people, then you can retain people and say, you are going to learn new skills that are going to be valuable in the industry. Like you said, RevOps is a brand new phenomenon around cost savings and better customer journey experiences and more enjoyable work. AI is going to be incredibly impactful in this area. So not only are you learning about a new area called RevOps that people don't even know about, it's a combination of marketing and finance and supply chain and operation. You're going to be like a unicorn. Not only could be the unicorn, but AI is going to be part of it. So you're going to learn AI, which is super popular too. And it's much more beyond the chat GPT that everyone is using, like they're using Word and PowerPoint. You're going to understand how to apply that AI. An example of that AI would be in a chatbot. You're going to learn how to develop the correct chatbot for our customers that's going to save you time so that you get to be, you're the concierge of our top clients because they're the ones that the chatbot can't interpret things for. So we are going to put you in charge of our 8++ customers, and you're going to help them so they have a better customer journey because we want our top customers to have that concierge journey where some of our other customers, where the AI can interpret everything, they're going to be handled by other people. You used to be handling those people, Tom or Susan, but now you're going to be the Ritz-Carlton, concierge service person, that helps with that customer journey. So that's how I think companies have to think about it. And that's how AI is going to be applied. It is going to change jobs and roles and descriptions, but especially in customer journeys, there's not only a chatbot, but there's also predicting what someone wants to do, give them different recommendations in their, when they're coming onto your site or they're coming into the store. Someone might invite them in for a special, customer awareness event. I could see this very much being applied both online and in person. Maybe someone doesn't want to come to a store. So someone's like, I'm going to set up a Zoom call with you to explain all these new products that we have. And there'll be more engagement with a customer because of AI, because of the time saving.
Sounds like you've been doing some convincing of your own here because you're very persuasive about it. Tell me what excites you the most about the growth of AI when it comes to applying analytics and new ways of making customer journeys in this kind of increasingly omni-channel world.
I think, I think the people who are going to be using it the most and the quickest, as always, are the, marketing and retail and, CPG companies, because they've been using granular data forever. And that's what, AI is all about, granular data. So they're very comfortable with it. They're very comfortable with complexities. They're very comfortable with marketing mix modeling. AI now, before as an example, for both companies and for advertising agencies, you would have to hire consultants every year to build your marketing mix modeling or tweak it with some economists and statisticians. Now AI is going to be able to do that for you. And you can do it in-house. And it's the analysts that can do it. Like, you don't even have to hire out, specialized data science to do it. So that is crazy good. So I think that's a big impact, like right away, that's going to be happening. But to me, the biggest area that it's going to have the most impact is in healthcare. And healthcare is, it's not only in what you've already seen. For example, everyone's heard about, where a radiologist, AI has been able to look, it has so many different screens now that they can say these all are safe. Here's some that really have to be looked by a radiologist. So now a radiologist value is that they can see and predict potentially more patients that need to be seen away. So there's, they're impacting saving lives. So that's one of the basic things. But think about it where AI is now going to be able to impact when they're talking to their doctors, and their doctors are now going to be much more effective when they're with what they're able to predict or see or take in all the different history of different things for an individual, so that they can be more proactive with their healthcare. And also, I think consumers, this is where the consumer aspect comes in. They are going to be much more satisfied with their HR outcome. So I think all those things are that's where I see AI saving money. It'll cost a lot of money, but it'll save money, and people will have better outcomes and better experiences. And when people have that, then we're going to have a much more productive society. And it doesn't have to be productive. It can be, I'm saying productive in terms of our overall well-being and our happiness. Productivity, when I'm saying that, is not about more hours spent at work. I predict AI, we're going to spend less hours at work. We're going to be healthier. And so we're not going to be taxing our healthcare system as much due to AI.
So does the center work primarily with healthcare in the healthcare industry, or are you? Yeah, that's fascinating, Mary. I mean, our group really usually is on the line for things like CRM adoption, sales acceleration adoption. So they are often talking to, again, really skilled relationship builder type sales folks who may not want to put all sorts of data in the CRM or may not want to um, take the recommendation of a chatbot that's telling them based on the data, this is the next thing you should do with this client. So I think it's very relevant for this audience. And that kind of human factor studying, I think, is so important when any new user interface comes online, which of course that's what ChatGPT is, it's the user interface into the large language models. So is there anything in terms of, employee experience that you guys work on that might be interesting to share with this audience? Sure. Yeah, that's a great point. Is there any case study that you can share that wouldn't trip any wires in terms of confidentiality, that was a really good and maybe counterintuitive A/B split test? Um, think, of course. Yeah. Tell me about something that keeps you up at night about the growth of AI. Are there any mistakes or pitfalls you hope that leaders in RevOps will avoid as we become increasingly reliant on it? Right. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I definitely agree with what you're saying about everybody seeing something and saying something, right? That's the only way to make sure we're norming it for brand experience, for customer journey, for the overall health of the business. But when it comes to RevOps, a lot of times they're not in charge of the algorithms that are running in the background, all of that. So does it come down to data observability? Like the data you're seeing just doesn't match patterns in your head, or what's the practical advice for how to do that? See something, say something. For sure. For sure. And persistence. Yes. Curiosity. Yeah. Yeah, and this is a good segue to my next question. So, what advice do you give young talent who's seeking positions in revenue technology or analytics or AI like this? And for folks who are in hiring positions, how do we bring diverse skills and experiences into the fold? So, how do we get more women, minorities, people outside
Yeah.
of revenue functions in this fastest growing job function in the United States, according to LinkedIn?
Well, I think for I think one, they should be going hopefully they're going to campuses and holding talks about RevOps. I don't know if you really had to go to high school, but I would definitely be going to undergraduate classes. I would hit the undergraduates, by the time people are, master's students, at the MBAs, they're already deciding where they want to go. But I would hit undergraduates, and I wouldn't just go to the business school. I would go to, across all the different, some different departments, economics, psychology, all these different things, and explain why you need people in RevOps. Like, why would you need a psychologist or someone who's interested in psychology? Well, RevOps, we want to understand consumer behavior and how it impacts all the different parts of the business. Or, in business or in engineering, telling them more about the business aspect of it. So that would be one thing, is going in and sponsoring, I would say, lectures around it. Another way is to work with universities such as like Wharton, where we have an experiential learning program where companies can bring RevOps problems, and then we put together a highly curated group of students to solve that particular problem. I think that's a really good way to to get talent, and especially if the pipeline is really narrow for that. And then finally, I don't, and, I'm not as familiar with this topic as much as I should be. So I'm not sure if there's, Coursera classes around RevOps, and can someone get a RevOps certificate? Do they get more money? How does a RevOps, role compare to, a consulting role, or a financial analyst role, or a data scientist role? So I think helping students navigate it and not making them navigate it, but it's a growing field. It's going to grow from whatever, 1x to 10x in 5 years, educating people about that as well. But going to the campuses, I think it's good. And then being involved with some of these, organizations that can kind of spread the word.
Yeah, great advice. And again, just as somebody who's working in higher ed and sees all those opportunities, it's invaluable advice. So thank you for that. Just as a last question, if there was a corporation who's listening to this, who was interested in getting involved with what you do at Wharton, how do you engage with corporations, and how do they get in touch with you?
Well, the way they would get in touch with me, or our AI at Wharton Center, there is an email.
And we can
You
put
can
that in the
go
show
to,
notes. So yeah.
yeah, they'll put that in the show notes.
Yep.
But one way to do that would, we have a program where they would contact us, and they can even submit it online. Say, we want to solve this particular problem in RevOps, or we want to educate people about RevOps. From there, we'll either connect them with like career services, or we'll connect them with student clubs around RevOps. But if they want to work with our center, they have a company they want to solve for, and they really want to attract students to that. They could, we have a program called our Analytics Accelerator. We could define what that project is, and we have data scientists that work with the company to define what that is, clean the data, and then we have a competition where we have data scientists from the engineering school and analysts from the business school. They develop a team. They work on the project over in terms of a semester, and then provide that solution back. So, that's a way in which and it's a real solution. So this is not like this is just for classroom time. It's a real solution that can be implemented. Another way they can do it is if it's a very technical solution that needs academic focus. We can set up what we call our research opportunity, and then we define what that is. We do a webinar, and we have 3,500 academics around the country, actually around the globe, and they all listen in, and then they apply to work on that particular project. So there's a lot of resources right there. And I'll just tell you the value of both of those, whether it's students or academics, are both very well qualified individuals that work on it. They get things done. So I don't know about you, but I still have like a pile of photos that I'm supposed to have put in photo albums for the last 10 years. Like, if I hired someone who has no emotional connection to it, it'd be done in an hour.
Good point.
But instead, I have this, cultural, emotional connection, can't touch it. So sometimes
Yeah,
when you
good
want
analogy.
something on your to-do list for, a certain period of time, you need to get it done. This is a way to do that. It's very refreshing. And the other thing it is it involves people from your company that get fresh perspective on how to solve a problem or new approaches. And it really invigorates especially if you want it to be a catalyst for change. So yes, Wharton does this. Other schools do it. You could do it in your community, but that I would recommend that, go and talk to an outside entity that has and has a really good reputation that you can involve with your team. It's very inexpensive. It's much less expensive than consulting with a top consulting company. Not that there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying it's.
No, I hear you. The creativity that comes from people from diverse backgrounds getting together to solve problems is different than a consulting culture for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I don't know if RevOps has done this, but connected with some of these other data organizations, these chief data officer conferences and such. We know we talked about like how you connect with talent, but I think that's another good thing to do is figuring out how to connect with some of these other established organizations where the CMO is there or the CDO or CIO. Those are really prominent people that probably impact chief revenue operations. And so I would say possibly getting on some of those stages and aligning it with CDOs and CIOs and CAOs, chief analytic officers, et cetera, would be a good thing as well.
Terrific. Mary, it has been so much fun talking to you. Thank you so much for all the time today. And any last thoughts or anything that you haven't shared about why you love your job?
Yeah, I can't believe it, but I've been involved with data. It was serendipity. It was just by luck that I was attracted to working with data and solving interesting questions around consumers. And I just am very grateful for the opportunity to do that. And so those of you who are in positions that can, influence younger folks, younger individuals to be a part of this RevOps, analytics, AI, please encourage them to be part of that because you're helping a trajectory for their career. So I'd like to share that. And it's very exciting time. And we're just so lucky that technology finally caught up to be able to manage all this data. So now we can solve the problems in real time.
Wonderful.
So thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, Betsy, and learning a little bit more about RevOps. So I appreciate that.
Thanks again, Mary.